Hi, and this video are tips to create a good villain, or how to make your audience love the bad guy, right? So we all have a great villain, the Joker, Hannibal Lecter, right? All the baddies, Scar, and I could go on and on, Bane, Scarecrow, right? We all know the names, right? Alright, so how do you achieve this thing is competence, right? You have to make the villain competent. They must be effective and get results. Sometimes, frankly, you could simply ride on this and get amazing results. I know there's the current trend of like the sympathetic villain that they are affected by trauma, or like making them relatable and such. Frankly, you can just ride on this alone and get results. For example, Darth Vader, for like the first two movies, just a straight baddie, or like a straight badass, right? Similarly with Boba Fett or with Winter Soldier, for most of the movie until it was revealed to be Bucky, simply by being competent and efficient, I could mention Killmonger, I could mention Thanos, right? Even before the reveal that, oh, there's this extra layer to them, simply by being hyper competent, we are like instantly gripped because they pose a substantial, significant threat to the protagonist, and they immediately become memorable just by being competent, right? 2, agency. Get your character active. This works really well if your baddie is like the main character, like a Jordan Belfort in Wolf of Wall Street, or a Breaking Bad, or Prince Damon in House of the Dragon, or Thanos, right? Simply by making the villain not merely reactive but active. They are setting their own plans. They are on their own railroad, right? They're not just dormant. They're not just waiting to be approached. They're not just reactive. They are acting, right? They are on their own railroad of goals, independent from the protagonist or adjacent to the protagonist, but they're on their own railroad of goals. You can pair this with like a strong conviction, strong motivation. You don't need to, but you can, right? But just agency, the fact that they are active is enough to draw the audience to them, right? And sometimes, like cases like the Joker and American Psycho, this can create like an almost unintentional bad lesson because people start to idolize them. I think it's in our nature as humans to like respect strength, or like respect power fantasies, and you sort of reach there when you have a very competent actor in your protagonist that's supposed to be a bad guy, or your bad guy acting in opposition to your protagonist, right? You sort of get that unintentional adulation, yeah. But I think that is a part of human nature, albeit a dark side of it, and I don't think writers should like try to moralize or like run away from it. Overall we get that they're bad, but every human being is like a blend of all the emotions, and sometimes that witnessing of a terrible person, although in a confined context, right, on the screen where no one is actually getting hurt, right, that sort of bravado or like devil may care attitude is appealing to our human emotions, because we have a bit of that in everyone, right, and it can actually be quite healthy to engage with depictions of villainy in like a performative context where no one's actually getting hurt. I could argue that. Anyway, next thing is person is resourceful, right? They have many hats to pull from. There are many creative ways in which they can hit you. Favorite example of this is Dr. Octopus, right? Because of his abilities, the forearms, there's many creative ways and come at Spider-Man. Makes for great action scenes, delicious action scenes. There's many hats you can pull from. A good example of this is Magneto, right? There's many hats that Magneto can draw from. control of metal. Many creative applications that can be put to, and is delicious and it's lovely to watch and eat up. It makes the conflicts engaging, makes it feel like less of a it makes you forget watching a movie. It makes you sit on the edge of your seat because like, oh my god, how are they going to make it out of this one, right? He can hit you from here, can hit you from here, can hit you from here, can hit you from here. How are they going to make it out of this one, right? And driving the audience to the point where they're like, oh, how are they going to get out of this one? Is like when you get a villain that is resourceful to that point, the audience forgets they're watching a movie, they forget they're reading a book, they are sucked in, they edge of their seat anticipating, right? Because you've made the villain so resourceful, giving them so many hats they can pull out of, right? So many ways they can hit our protagonist that my sense of the flow of narrative from consuming media is thrown off. Because people consume a lot of media, read a lot of books, people develop an intuitive sense of story. Oh, this is, when the dark night of the soul happens. This is when the bad guy dies. This is when they resolve the plot. This is when, the climax coming and our heroes win. When you make the villain so resourceful that it beats our imagination as to how the heroes could win, suddenly that internal sense of story mechanism is sort of like thrown off. That internal clock is thrown off, and suddenly we're like in the seat with the protagonist, experiencing moment by moment. Because suddenly we are wondering, hold on, how could this possibly end? Because I can't figure it out. So what's happening, right? And suddenly you've got their attention, right? The third one, which isn't always necessary, especially if you're dealing with an antagonist that is a circumstance, right? So antagonist can be circumstance, right? My exams are coming up, right? Shipwrecked, right? In those cases, the antagonist, the obstacle is the circumstance or the environment, right? So typically man vs nature stories. Think Robinson Crusoe, right? Swiss Family Robinson, those kinds of movies. The Life of Pi, right? Or the obstacle is the circumstance, right? I need to find a date to the prom or the dance. I need to pass my exams. I need to get a job, the pursuit of happiness, those kinds of things, right? Yes. In those cases, all the above apply, just the villain is not a person or like embodied in a person, right? So those can also work. Typically, in all movies, you can do a 1-2 punch. So you can do a ticking time bomb where there is a time limit within which our heroes have to carry out the action. So that is also an ephemeral antagonist, and there is a physical embodiment of the antagonist in the villain personality. So it's like a 1-2 punch. Or mostly in dramas like Mantis, you only get the villain, the antagonist as an obstacle, the obstacle circumstance. And in those cases, same should apply, that it's hitting them from all angles, that it's effective, and that it is forcing our protagonists into a reactive state in which they have to formulate their plan and act, right? Good. And the final one is, which is helpful when you have a person as a villain, is that the villain is a metaphor for the hero's internal struggle, right? So someone like, for example, was a mirror in the sense that he was a reminder to the hobbits what would happen to them if they got corrupted, right? He was a living embodiment of someone completely corrupted by the ring, right? That was beside them always, right? Dr. Octopus with the forearms, was embodying being stretched thin in a movie where Spider-Man was being stretched in many directions at once. It was being stretched thin. You have Scarecrow, the embodiment of fear, in a movie where Batman was trying to deal with using fear as a weapon, at the same time being a victim of fear from his childhood trauma, right? You have Bane, that was like an unstoppable force, right? That he physical force he couldn't overcome that would break his will. In a movie where he had to learn to summon the will to keep going on, right? So that is great addition, especially in genre fiction, sci-fi, fantasy. I think it works great. So that is how to write a great villain. But if all else was, if you forget all else, get the villain active, keep them active. You can even have the most horrible human being as the main protagonist, and it would still work so far as they are active and they have lots of agency. Okay. So like and subscribe if you like this for more tips, more writing chats, and I'll see you. Bye bye.